But before we have our break, we are going to hear from a first timer, Paul Normandin. Am I saying your name right? From the country of Texas. So we're looking forward to hearing your story. So I like that you've set yourself up in a theater that's filled with chairs, if not people.
Yes.
Work away. We can hear you. So launch into your story. Thanks very much.
The first time I had to stand in front of people and talk was for an undergraduate public speaking class at Texas A&M University. I was so very afraid. I found some comfort by talking about hugging. I had read books on it. I knew how to hug. And at the end of the speech, I asked everyone to stand and give each other a hug. When they actually did what I told them to do, I was beside myself. I pestered the professor with questions all the way back to her office. And there, she introduced me to the head of the department. The next day, I was studying speech communication as my major. Years later, my girlfriend and I moved to the big city of Austin. We got married, bought a house. Then we filled it with 2 adopted dogs, 2 adopted cats, and 1 beautiful little adopted girl. Well over a decade went by. I worked as a super uptight project manager. Every day was scheduled weeks in advance. Nothing was unplanned, even the hugs. So many hugs. Daughter hugs, kitty hugs, doggy hugs, wake up hugs, go to bed hugs, I'm sorry you had a nightmare hugs. My love of hugs, my daughter, and the family my wife and I had made was complete. We had seen the signs along the way, yet we were completely unprepared for her break with reality at 19. My daughter was diagnosed with a severe mental illness. Soon after this break, she moved out of the house to live on the street. I was inconsolable and angry. I lived in constant fear the phone would ring with news of her death. Feelings would boil up in me unannounced, but they came like clockwork when I saw people on the street corners asking for money. I wanted to yell at them. Go home, get help. I never told anyone, and I lived in my cocoon of fear. I miss seeing, talking to, and hugging my daughter. It took years to find her and convince her to self-commit to a mental facility. After dropping her at that facility, my soul was desolate. My feelings overwhelmed me often, and I was not coping. I would randomly break into tears. I had trouble staying focused. Loved ones intervened, and I got help. Part of that help came in the form of classes for improv comedy in downtown Austin. 10 minutes after coming in the door to my first class, I was laughing. I couldn't remember the last time I had laughed. At 48 years old, I was the oldest person in the room. In each class, the rules of improv were hammered into me over and over. Say yes, don't be afraid, just try. After each class, I hugged every person in the room. As classes went on, I hugged these new friends before and during class. I found this temporary reprieve from my fear in that little theater. Phone calls with my daughter ended with me losing sight of her potential. My dread that she would never leave the facility and my recriminations of every parenting decision I had ever made. And at night, I was re-energized by young people laughing and hugging. After one class, I was talking to a classmate on the street. A person experiencing homelessness interrupted our conversation to ask us for money. I lost my temper and yelled at the interrupter. When I looked back at my friend's face, I saw everything I needed to know. I was still so angry, so afraid, and so very broken. I was sitting in a bar after a class with a large group of students, some from different classes. These students were people I wanted to see succeed, people who were now my friends and all had such potential I feared lost for my daughter. The conversation turned to, What were we going to do with our newfound improv skills? Each person had a plan. Some were going to go to Saturday Night Live in New York, some to Second City in Chicago, others to Hollywood to be a star. I was sure they could all do it. I was 6 months into my improv training, sitting at a table with my new friends, crying in fear that I had no answer to this question. I remembered why I was taking improv, and I had zero expectations. These classes were the end for me. But in that moment, I indulged the premise. What would I do with my new improv skills of say yes? What would I do if I was no longer afraid and just tried? When it came around the table to me, I said, I want to stand on a street corner with a sign that says free hugs. It got a huge laugh. When they realized I was serious and crying, everything changed. Everyone told me I could do that and how they would help. I was simultaneously afraid and so sure I had to do this. Within days, I was on a street corner in downtown Austin at 8 a.m. with a big poster that read, free hugs. My new best friend from improv met me there before I got out of my car. They told me they would be my first hug, but there was no way they were going to stand in the cold and hug strangers all day. I knew that was exactly what I was called to do. And each and every year since, I picked one day to stand and hug hundreds and sometimes thousands of strangers on that corner across the street from the improv theater. On the best days, my daughter, my wife, and my improv friends all join me. Thank you.
Oh, Paul, thank you so much. That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful story. Thank you. Oh, there we are.
I didn't know she was going to do that.
I was going to say that's a story that calls for a hug. Yeah, that's lovely.